Okay, I've got sound, and I'm going to go over um, final exam part B for BISS 4403 data admin. Part A was a gimme 105 points for uploading a table with some fields. Everybody did fine on that. Part B is also a gimme. Let me explain. It's 125 points, and there are, if I'm not mistaken, there are 19 items. So if you missed all 19 items, you lose 76 points. So you'd still come out with what is it, 125. You'd still come up with what 49 points that you're given. So we didn't have anybody do that bad, but these are pretty challenging, and there are a variety of reasons why people missed these items. And in Canvas, I have the comments, and as I put out on Jupyter Grades, I said, please, here's the 3 things you need to do. See this, okay? Take a look carefully at the instructions for Part B, because a lot of folks did not. They missed stuff. And then take a look at the comments that I've got there, and I've noted those tasks where you missed it. You didn't do it correctly. Something happened. It can be a variety of things. There are some people who just didn't do it. I had some people who just uploaded the same query over and over and over. And there are some who had some things that happened. They had some parameter issues, that type of thing. So I'm going to go over this, and this is the key. All right. And I have it for you now. Some of you probably did not do very well, and it kind of was a shock. So to a certain extent, I to the best I can, I'll try to answer your questions, but I think I probably will answer a lot of them tonight as I go through this through the group. Well, there were a series of tasks. As I said before, you had to upload that table. That was 125 points, so that was just almost like a gift. There's another 49 points in here that's a gift. There are 19 items. If you miss all 19, it's 76 points out of 125. So you're still getting basically 49 points, okay, for just kind of showing up if you missed them all. I want to talk about each one of them, and it probably would do you a good. If you really want, and you really want to know what's going on, would be to have you could probably have your query up or your files up and take a look at them as I go through this. But I think once you hear a lot of the explanations, and if you look back at your file and you compare it with what's here, all right, and you compare it with what's in the instructions, you're going to find I might miss 1 or 2 things here or there, but on the whole, I pretty much hit the mark. All right, I'm going to start with task number 1. All right, and I'm going to start with the view on it, the SQL view, and here we're going to select, and I'm even going to put it up here on the I'm even put it up here on the notepad so you can see it. And select question answer from final part A. In other words, just select something. That's all you had to do. Okay. Now I'm going to go over here to task number 2. Here's one that a lot of people missed, which they should not have. Okay. And I'll tell you what it is right here to the design view. Okay. Now even I, okay, should have done this right. So I'm going to correct it right now. Okay. And I'm going to save this. And if you look at question number 2, it says create a run query that uses the select clause to list data from 2 fields in your database. Sort the rows in descending order. Okay, so there should be 2 of those queries in descending order. A lot of people just did 1. You just saw what I just did 1 right there. So but I caught it. But hey, if you didn't do 2 fields in descending, you missed it. Now here's task number 3, and let's open it up. All right, Task number 3, and I'm going right along on the instructions for this. Create and run a query that uses an equal condition in the where clause. Well, there's the equal, okay, and you can see that right there. So that's so if you didn't put equal, you missed that one, or if you didn't do it, you missed that one. I had some people who just they just didn't do queries, or they just put in the same query over and over. Here's task number 4. Task number 4, I'm reading right from the instructions. Create and run a query that uses a less than condition. I had some people who put in greater than. I had some people who put in not equal to, but it should have been less than, and that's what you had to do. So you can see we're kind of going through this repertoire of different queries that we worked with. Here's task number 5, and this is a not equal condition. There are a couple of ways you could have used the not equal sign. You could have used where not. And this will give you everything that's not chapter 6. And I'll show you that. And there it is. Chapter 6 is nowhere to be found. There's task number 6. Again, I'm going right through these instructions. Create and run a query that uses the between condition in the where clause. Now here you see I used it between 8 and 15. So as you looked at the progression of the pages, you should have said, oh, okay, yeah, there were a lot of examples in the chapters for you to help you, okay. And I had a lot of people who contact me. I tried to help them the very best I could, but for it to be right, it's got to have the between, and also it's got to run. Okay, so if you had the code in there but it didn't run, if I got an unexpected parameter error, then that's a different issue. You missed it. Here's task number 7. I'm going to open it up, and here we are. And this is where you, on task 7, you use the where clause using the like condition. And I'll just put it over here in the design view, and you'll see like, and I run it, and it works. So far, we just kind of, what we've done is really we've just gone through kind of a repertoire of these. Task number 8, create and run a query that uses a compound condition. So you're going to have 2 conditions, and you'll see here. I'll go back up to the design view. You'll see here's the 2 conditions. The first criterion is it's got to be chapter 6. The second is it's got to be greater than page 390. So that's a compound. I'll run that puppy, and there it goes. Okay, and a lot of these were just simply, many of these we did them in screencasts. We did them as I went through each of the chapters with the lunches database. And so there were no surprises with a lot of these. Now, as you would guess, these got more difficult as we went along. And the scores on this exercise were all over the map. But if what you have doesn't match, and it doesn't perform as it should, the query, it's wrong. I mean, that's really, that's all there is to it. And I know I'm going to get some people, I don't know how I got that score, etc. Well, I'm showing you how, because if what you've got doesn't work and it doesn't match, then you've got a problem. You need to have the code in the query, and then it has to run for you to have done that task. Let's look here for task 9. That was one where I asked you to create a table with a select statement. Okay. Now you can also create a table using the tools in the query. And I'm going to show you real quickly here. Here's the query design. Okay, and you'll note you can make a table, append, update. Many of you did the updates. You can delete, but many of you used that update tool and did that very well. And I think it was, let's see here. Yes, question item 10, pardon me, yeah, task 10, where you were doing, where you were asked to update. Well, I'm going to close this off, and I'm going to close that query because I'm not messing with it. All right. Now let's look at task number 9. And that was we created the table. Now we're to task 10, and you'll notice something right here. You're going to see that the icon for this query looks different than what we normally have. And that's because we're going to work with some data definition elements or some data addition, subtraction, or change elements. And I'll show you what we're talking about. Now I'm going to open up to the design view here. Okay. And here it's going to say update task 9, set chapter equal chapter minus 100. Now I'll show you here in the design view. We can see it a little bit better. Now when you do an update query, notice up here in the left-hand corner, okay, you'll see the little pink, you'll see the icon go. It'll give you a pink. In other words, it says we're doing an update query. Okay, as we've discussed, there's several types of queries: select, make a table, append. You can do cross tabs. There's delete. This is the update, and here it is, and it's pretty simple to use. Here it is. You put in the chapter, you put in the task, and the update too. And if you have a criterion, you add the criterion in there. That's all there is to it. It's pretty easy to use. So I'm going to run it, and it'll say you're about to update your rows, and I do, and I'm good. So I've done task 10. Here's task 11. Now again, also, I've referenced page numbers in the book that would provide you some help or some context for working with these. But again, you got to remember something. When you created your table, okay, this is something I saw. Some of us, when we created a table, weren't very thoughtful about the format of the data. That's why I hammered so hard about, building a table, and getting it formatted properly, right? And so there's, when you look, you say, well, here are these that I missed. You should focus on these, and it probably would not be a bad idea for you to, let me say this also, this produces a transcript. And so you can also download the transcript and look at your work, okay? And I always get people who will write me out, there's no possible way, and then I go through, and they come to see me, or I have to write this long email and say, here's the deal, here's where you missed, here's where you missed. So if you didn't do these things, if the structure of the code's not in there, you had a problem. On the whole, everybody did pretty well, but this is, it's kind of a challenge. Now we're going to look at 11, and that's where we create a form, and there it is. That's task 11. Then we had task number 12. And on task 12, we were asked to create and run a query that uses a column alias. And you'll see the as right here. That's that column alias. And we'll run it. And there's the column alias. And I think it was as was the column alias we were creating. Now we go back down in here to the SQL to see that. As select the question, and we're going to use the column alias. We'll call it now final underscore question. Here's task 13. We were asked to do that. 13 was create and run a query that counts the number of columns and rows in your table. I think I had one person who got this correct. Now this is a pretty challenging, and I got a lot of people who gave me counts of rows, but no columns and rows. So I'm gonna open it up for you and let you see it. All right, okay. Now, pardon me. This is the old one. Yeah, I forgot. This is why I wanted to show you this, because this is typically what I'll get and my table has 100 rows in it, but I'm not getting the column count. And I'm going to go down and show you the design view on this so you can see how it's not to be done. And here we've got these expressions and these counts. All right, and I'm counting answers, but when I go to the data sheet view, I get the count, but it's not right because I'm only getting the count of the rows. I'm not getting a count of the columns. Now, a few years ago, I had a guy write me, he was a student, he said, I've had Microsoft, blah, blah, blah. I'm certified, you can't do this. It's impossible to watch. And this is the one I corrected. I'll open it up, and there we are. There are the rows in the final part A. There are the IDs. There are the questions, the answers, the pages, the chapters, the total records, and the total columns. Okay? Notice that I've got 5 columns. Okay? I've got 100 rows. I have a total of 500 records. And I'll show you down here in the design view. And I'll go to the SQL view to let you see that. Now I'm gonna take that SQL view and I'm gonna copy it and put it in here. This is a tough one. Like I said, I think I had one answer person who came close and got it. Now I want to talk to you for a minute what we're doing. I'm going to select count, and there's the asterisk everything as number of rows in final part A. Then I'm going to count the question number as IDs. I'm going to count, I'm using the count function, the question as questions. I'm going to count, and this time I'm using answer. So I'm counting the answer as answers. And it doesn't matter the format of the data because the count function is an a summative function or an aggregator. It lets us just simply count. So I'm going to count page as pages, count that function again, chapter as chapters, and then I'm going to add up IDs plus questions plus answers plus pages plus chapters as total records. And then I'm going to take the total records and divide it by the number of rows in final part A as total columns from final part A. And so I've got 5 columns and I've got 100 records. So I have a total number of 500 cells, if you want to say that. This is a toughie. It makes you. This is probably the toughest of all of these that I give everybody. And it's few people that get them right. I'll go up to the data sheet view, excuse me, and there you are. If you have 5 columns and 100 rows, then you basically have 500 total records. Really, that would really, a record's going to be a whole row, but I do have the number of columns and rows. Now, to prove it to you, I'm going to come over here to final part A and I'll open it up, and you will see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 columns and 100 records. This was just one of those, and you'll remember, and note, I even had to go back in and correct one because I had to fight to struggle to get through it. So if you didn't get it, it's no big deal. It's a tough one. You have to pull together a whole lot of different elements to get it right. Okay, so we're going to go on down to task 14, and I'm looking at the design view of that. Task 14 said, create and run a query that uses the group by clause. Well, here it is. I'm going to select the answer, and I'm going to group it by the answer, and I'll run it. All right, now I've got the answers grouped by false or true. Those are the groupings that I have. Now I'm going to look at task 15. I'll open it up. On task 15, it says, create and run a query that uses the having clause, save the query, and name it task 15. All right. This is one that can give you a little bit of a battle. Okay. And I'm going to go down to the SQL view and let you see. Notice what we've got going. In fact, let me take this up here. And if you're all flexed out about your grades, look, I know this is a challenging exercise, and I know it can have an impact, but I also know it's good to give you the challenge. And those anybody who missed 5 or 6 of these or less, you did very well. You did very well, because I take you through the whole repertoire of this, of practically every type of query out there. So in many ways, this is a review. Now, let's look at this. I'm going to select the final chapter, and this is task 15. Okay, here's the having clause. I select the final chapter, select final part A dot chapter, okay, and from final part A, and then I group by a final underscore part A dot chapter, having, and here's where the chapter is greater than 10. So I use the having clause to get that accomplished. Now, over on page 460, they talk about the having clause, and there's a couple of things, and I'm going to grab my textbook if I've got it around here somewhere, or someone has thrown the thing away from me. Thought I had it here, and wait, it's gone all week. Hang on a second. Here it is. Now, don't get freaked out and go, I'm not going to graduate. Don't do that, please. It's just not going to happen. You need to see this. You need to watch it so you know what's going on. And tell your friends, hey, take a look. And it really would be a good idea for you to have if you had your work in screenshots and you could take a look and see, you could probably follow along a lot better. But I think I'm making a point. Over on page 460, they talk about the having clause, all right? And let me pop over there. Now, they give you, they talk about eliminating summarized data, and they walk you through an example there of the having clause. And I had some of you tonight working, seeing that as a model, all right? Now I want to talk about it, and then I'm going to talk about what I've done with my situation. Here on page 460, they start with this beginning table, which is the lunch items table, okay? Now, you have the result table before the having clause is applied. If you look at the query as it flows through, we have a field, we select another field, then we invoke the sum, okay, and the quantity. Now, quantity in this table, quantity is a field in this table, and it's a numeric field. Since it's a numeric field, you can use the sum function. And then notice they use as total servants. This is page 460 in the text is total servings. So they use a column alias from the lunch table, from the lunch items table, and then they group it by supplier ID and product code, and then they say the ones having a sum, that's the quantity, greater than 10. And they give you a note there, a little one note, and if you look back over and then on the page 462, they explain it. All right, so what the having does is it lets us search for a particular quantity. And and remember, this is over chapter 12, talking about the level of summarization. And then you see we order by supplier ID and product code. Now I want to talk about what I did over here in this query, task 15. I selected the A dot chapter. So I'm using a final part A dot chapter. Okay, so I'm using chapter out of that field, out of that table, from the table. So I'm getting the chapter out of that table, and then I'm going to group it by the chapter, and having, and I'm going to use and the chapter part, and I've got chapter in that, I've got chapter inside those brackets. Notice I've got an operation going on here. I'm going to group it by chapter, and I'm going to use the having clause to say, okay, I'm going to group it on the basis of any chapter that's greater than 10. And that's what's going on there. The having clause is kind of a challenge, and there the authors over on page 462 talk about the difference of it and the where clause. And frankly, I tend to, I get a little nervous when I use it till I know for sure why. I have to work through it just like many of you did. But I'll show you here. I'll run it, and there we are. And I want any having a chapter greater than 10, and I've got them. Okay, so that's task 15. Task 16. Let's talk about it for just a minute. And again, I'm going right from the instructions. Task 16. I'm going to create and run a query that forms a cross join of your table with itself. We had talked about this, and this pops us all the way over to page 614, where we start working with tables and combining them and splitting them apart. And I'm going to show you the code for that. Here it is. And let me get this up here. I'm going to close this for just a minute. I don't want to save those changes. I'm going to go back to 16. I'm going to go to the design view, and I'm going to click C and get rid of all this. Now, let me get rid of this for a minute. Here's what's going on. I'm going to select a dot question, okay, a dot answer, b dot question as b underscore question. Now, notice some things. First of all, I'm using table aliases. How do you know? The A in front of the question, the A in front of the answer, and the B in front of the question. So I'm using a column A, I'm using a table alias, and then I use a column alias as B underscore question. And then B dot answer as B underscore answer. So I'm taking the question, that B dot question, and I'm renaming it, and the answer from this B, I'm going to rename it as well. Now, really what I've done is what I've simply done is just say, okay, let's pretend I have two tables here, A and B. They're identical. And I'm going to take it from final part A. And so I've identified final part A as A and final part A as B. So you'll see this up here. Here's the table, final part A. And I just basically used the table alias and a column alias to let me split this thing apart and then put it back together. Okay, and I'm going to do that here, and we'll run the query, and there we are. And you'll see, now this is what now as I told you before, and I think as you guessed pretty easily, as you moved up in the tasks, they got more and more complex and a little more tricky. And this is a tough one. This was a tough one. A lot of you got it. Inadvertently at times, and some of you, well, many of you got it correct, many of you did not. And the whole key was understanding I'm renaming the table. I'm getting certain fields from this table B, and I'm getting certain fields from my original table A, and then I'm executing the query. And again, that one, it's a cross join, okay, and and they talk about cross joins over on page 614. And this, and listen, is not for the faint of heart. It's a tough one. It really is not. This is, as you know, as we went through those lunches databases, they got more and more complex. Now, let's look at task number 17. All right. Now, task 17 says create and run a query that uses the IIF function. Most of you, a lot of you got that, and you just used the, well, I'll just show you here. Okay, here's the IIF function used on the chapters. So I looked for anywhere where the chapter was equal to or less than 10. And notice I have then a comma, then chapter, and then I have a space as first half. So I'm creating a field called first half using that function. And then I'm going to use the IIF function. It's a search function for any chapters greater than 10. And then I'll have the chapter, and then I'll have the blank space, and I'm going to call that field as second half, and I'm getting all of that from final part A, my table. All right, and let me take this down. And like I said before, these start, you know, we're starting to see some more complex queries, and there it is, first half and second half. So many folks struggled with this. Many of you worked through it. Let's talk about task 18. I'm going to go to the design view there, and I'm going to copy it. Now, I want to say this also. I know all of you have worked very, very hard in this course, putting the tables together, writing these queries. Final part A was kind of gimme. Okay, I know that. Part B was something else, and the check your understandings. So it's been kind of rugged, and I understand that. And so I've looked at it with the eye of saying, you know, folks who are maybe on the brink, you know, I'll probably be pretty generous depending upon did you participate and did you turn work in. I have a problem with people who come and whine to me about their grades, but who, after I'd go, okay, well, here's Lunches Database 11, folks. We're all done. Upload it, and they don't upload it. And I get 6, 7, 8, 9 of those. And I've had a few people. I got to tell you, I'm not real sympathetic about that. But I know you want the feedback, and I really believe on this, the best way to give you the feedback is to do what I'm doing here, saying, okay, here, and I will make this key. I'll make it visible over in Canvas, and you can see what I'm doing here as well. And here I'm going to select everything from final part A, where the chapter equals, and I enter a chapter number. Okay, and that's 18. It's parameter query. And I'll just run this. Here we go, and there's the parameter query. Well, almost everybody got that. And it's interesting, but I can see, because the structures of them are pretty easy to detect. Now, before I go from 18, I'll go into the design view, and you can see here in that criteria, we enter a chapter number. Criteria, a better word for criteria is condition. Now, this is 19, and I ask you to run a query that uses a subquery. I want to say almost so many of you got this correct. I think because you kind of see the structure of it. Let's go down to the SQL view, and you could see it. It's intuitively pretty easy to grasp. I'm going to select A dot question, A dot answer. I'm using a table alias, A dot page, A dot chapter from final part A as A. So I identified the table where, here's the where clause, chapter A dot chapter is less than, and I'm going to select the average of B dot chapter from final part A as B. So here's what I've done. I've taken that table, final part A, and I am pretending there's also a second copy of it. There's a copy of it, and that's called B. And I run this query where I select the average chapter from there. So I've done a subquery. And it's pretty intuitive because you'll see it buried inside of a set of parentheses. Now I'm going to run the query, and there it is. So I've got that subquery. That was pretty much it. Now there was task 20, and I asked you to do a report. Based on 19, and so that's pretty much it. Now again, I really think you get a lot more if you look at this, as I said over in Jupiter Grades, which again is the official grade book for the course. I said, hey, look at my comments in Canvas, because there's some of us who missed so many that I felt like the only way I can really even address it is like this. Otherwise I'll be writing a 10-page essay and you won't read it, but you'll perhaps want to see. It wouldn't be a bad idea for you to do print screens of all of your stuff, or have this up and be viewing it while you have your own work that you submitted out there to look at. There are a variety of reasons why people missed items. 1, didn't do it. You just simply didn't do it. 2, you submitted a query, but it wasn't at all relevant to what we were doing. It was just you just submitted something. 3, you had a parameter error where you were referring back to a field in a table, but you were misspelling it or something of that nature. Another was just simply some silly mistakes, not paying attention to detail. For example, you just saw where I was in there, and I think it's task 2, where I had said, choose 2 fields from your database, select 2 fields, and put them both in descending order. And as you saw when I opened it up, I had missed it. So a lot of people missed that, but it was just simply not following instructions. That's a very simple one. A less than condition, I had some people who I guess were confused about what less than is, and put a indicating a greater than. All right. So I think you can listen to this, then take the transcript, because you can make a transcript from this. And what I would do is this: you open up your work, take my transcript, then I'd have this open, and it's a videotape, and stop and go, okay, here's what I did, here's what he did. If you send me an email or an angry thing and saying I did all that stuff, I'm going to tell you right now, if I count off against it, something went wrong in there, and it can be any one of a number or sets of things that happen. And it's just like to check your understandings. There were reasons you simply you simply weren't able to figure out how to put the query together, and some of these were tough ones. Okay, you made some silly mistakes. You had some reference problems, parameter issues, a whole variety of things. And again, that's why I'm taking the time to do this recap, and also to make the key available to you for you to view, because I know some of you are at your scores, you're going to go berserk. And look, there's just no point in that, because I knew this is a challenge exam. I knew this is a challenging exercise for you, because we run through almost the full gamut of just about every type of query that you could possibly run and operation. And we start from just doing a simple select all the way up to where we're taking tables and putting them apart and splitting them up and all that business. And frankly, I understand that. So if I look at these, and I will say this, if I look at scores and I see that, for example, that a bad score on this hurts you significantly, I'm going to take that into account. So don't let this waylay you or scare you and make you think you won't graduate or any of that craziness. Okay, that's why I'm doing this screencast for you tonight. And once I've got the parts of the file that were due at the start, then all I've got to do is to go in and enter the scores from your quizzes, and I'll post your grades tonight. You can't ask for more, because my clock right now says it's 7:30 at night on Thursday. All right, and so by the time I'm finished, it'll probably be 9:30 or 10, but your grades will be posted. And trust me, as I look through them, I take Jupiter, which is the official grade book. I look at how you did on this, and I take into account, did you have missing assignments? So I'm not going to throw this out, but I wanted at all, but I do understand there are some of you that if you didn't care. Some of you've hit the point of exhaustion, like I'm getting to, because this has been, it seems people have been having a rough semester. It's spring, and I think everybody's just worn out. And in courses like this, they can tax you. And I saw 3 or 4 people in here tonight down to the deadline working, and other people who work very hard. So your score may not at all reflect your effort. It may just reflect some mistakes you made, or some issues in terms of maybe the book wasn't the best of examples. I've tried to give you those, and I've tried to be forgiving. And let me say one other thing. This exercise is worth 125 points. There are, and forgive me, there are 20 items. I count off 4 points per item. So if you got everything wrong, you're still getting 45 points. That, in addition to all the lunches database points, which are workshop points. So I'm not exactly stingy with the points. And so some of these, I challenge you a little bit to say, okay, here's a growth opportunity, but it won't kill you. Okay? So that's pretty much it, folks. Listen, I'm going to wrap this up, and I'm going to enter your scores from your quizzes, and I'll post your grades tonight. And again, before you attack me through an email or go berserk, listen to this, look at the instructions, compare it with your work that you submitted, and it probably will be quicker for you to read the transcript of this, because it will make a transcript, and engage in some due diligence before you go off the wire. This week I've had, probably this has been the worst 2 weeks I've seen since I've been here, with people who just go crazy, and then they come in, and by the time we're through, they walk out kind of sheepish, because yeah, they did get it wrong, they did make a mistake. I'm not perfect, okay, and as you saw, I just got the correcting thing, but I would never, ever, ever just simply count off if there wasn't an issue there. And so I looked for the following. Did the query design fit? Okay. Number two, would it execute? If it didn't execute, was there probably a reasonable cause for that? Yes. And so if I say you missed them, you missed them, or you just simply didn't submit them, or you submitted the same query over and over and over. I had a few people do that. I'm not sure what they're thinking. But I might miss a few here or there, but I'm pretty confident that I gave you a thorough look, because I start grading these as they start being turned in. I've been grading on these all week. So I keep pretty extensive notes, and they're just it comes apart. So, okay, well, okay, on this task, what's the typical thing? Well, on task number 19, it was just simply, it was just very often folks just were not, using table aliases and really grasping what was happening. And this is pretty complex, so I can understand that. And again, I'm not going to let this sink anybody's grade or ruin your life, okay? So don't get wild about it. This is an opportunity to challenge you and to get you thinking and push you a little bit, just like the CYU were. So many times students take these courses with me, and I think they think I'm such a pushover, and this stuff has no intellectual content. And then you find out I throw a lot of softballs in these courses. We're all friends, and we're all big people here, and I can speak with you honestly and say that we all do. In my courses, I throw you some softballs, and then I throw you some real challenges. And I try to use the challenges as an opportunity for you to grow. Well, that's pretty much it, folks. I'm going to close this off. And again, you want to look at the transcript. You want to look at my comments. I will try to answer your questions. But frankly, if I say you missed it, then go back and look to see, one, do you have a SQL that will do the job, that matches up? Because I'm going to make this key visible. Number two, does your query execute? Okay, so that I think is fair enough. Well, let's see, I'm going to stop the share, and then I'm going to stop the recording and end the meeting, and I'll post this over in announcements and let you know it's there.